Hello and welcome to the Viking reviews the VK3001D, the 3001D, the 3001D, or whatever you choose to call it. This is a tank which I think is quite often overlooked or underestimated when compared to the other Tier 6 medium tanks. As one of my most played tanks of all time before I stopped playing over a year and a half ago, I had it at 64% win rate and a healthy XP per battle of over 900. Now that I've started playing again, I think it's time I did it some justice and properly reviewed it. First and foremost, what is this tank? Well, roughly speaking, it's the German equivalent of the British Cromwell, a Tier 6 tank focused on a rapid-firing, low-damage gun placed on a very maneuverable chassis with so-so armor, or in the case of the VK3001D, quite situational armor. The armament is probably the reason this tank gets overlooked for the gem that it is, since it really is on the bad end of the scale both when it comes to the aiming time and the damage per minute, hell, even damage per shot. It's got a choice of two guns, although only one of them is really viable since the stock gun has pathetic 110mm penetration, which at Tier 6 is simply unacceptable. The upgraded gun has a decent penetration of 155mm, but the Achilles heel of the tank is its low damage per shell and long aiming time, forcing it into either a brawling role, which it simply doesn't have the armor for, or a sniping/supporting role, where it can output the full of its DPM potential. Fully upgraded and outfitted, this gun will output in the area of 18 to 1900 DPM. To put that into perspective, the M4 Sherman, fully outfitted, clicks in the upper end of 1600. Yeah, that's right. This tank is only decently outperforming the Sherman Jumbo when it comes to DPM, where the Cromwell is closing in on 2100. Furthermore, the aiming time of 2.3 seconds and the massive penalty dispersion the tank suffers when turning the tank and turret simultaneously means that the tank isn't the most effective brawler, even if its mobility certainly allows it. So where does the gun shine? Its accuracy. As most mid-tier German tanks, it's got great accuracy and a healthy rate of fire of 0.35 and 13 to 14 shells per minute respectively, meaning that it is entirely possible to keep an enemy tank tracked with pinpoint accuracy or kill a tank halfway across the map with only the tiniest sliver of the tank showing. Its low alpha damage of 135 is offset by the flexibility it gives the tank when it can quickly and effectively change between targets of opportunity, offsetting some of the disadvantages otherwise faced by low alpha tanks such as the Cromwell. However, its gun depression, while not terrible at 8 degrees, isn't something to write home about and doesn't allow it to fully use the magnificent armor sloping this tank has, forcing it to expose quite a bit of its hull when fighting over embankments. This brings us on to the armor of the tank, which by now you've no doubt noticed is quite heavily sloped, not just in the front, but on all sides of the tank. Don't mistake this for a well-armored tank, however, since the hull is only 60mm at the front of the hull, 40 at the sides and 50 at the rear, with the turret only being 80 at the front and 45 everywhere else, but with much less favorable sloping. It really is in your best interest to goad the enemy into firing at the hull rather than the turret. It does require some careful use of angling, understanding the slopes you're fighting on, and in general, some thought to use effectively. But when so used, it can pull off some miracles that the other Tier 6 medium tanks is simply incapable of with a better armor thickness but much less favorable sloping. Not only that, but enemy tanks will quite often underestimate your effective armor thickness, which is all the way up at 90mm at the front hull dead on, 100mm with sufficient angling to still be an auto bounce on your much weaker sides. However, when using the albeit limited gun depression, it can gain all the way up to 110 to 130mm, which is more than sufficient if using the tank at medium to long ranges or as a support tank. Another bonus of this kind of angling, at least in my opinion, is that you don't really need to worry so much about your weak spots, which do actually exist, since the tank can be penetrated most of everywhere anyway, without careful management. You could be forgiven for thinking that these protrusions on the tank here and here was nothing more than ornamental, much like the rangefinders on the T-29 turret. However, this is not so, as they are actually spaced armor with a 30mm thickness. Now I hear you thinking, oh, so that must be a buff, right? The sides was only 40mm normally, so this should be a 2-layer area with a combined thickness of 70mm, right? Right? Wrong! There's actually an area behind this protrusion where the hull thickness is 0, meaning that these are weak points when fired at from the side. However, they are of very little importance, since, as I said, most of the tank's armor is weak when in an unfavorable engagement to begin with. And this brings us on to the last and probably greatest strength of this tank, its mobility. Now, comparing this tank to the Cromwell, which we can hopefully all agree is its fiercest competitor in the mobility department, this tank doesn't actually do too bad. It's heavier at 33 tons fully loaded, but has a more powerful engine. Not a lot of difference there, but it does mean that the Cromwell has a specific power of 23 against the 3001D's 21. Something that, when combined with terrain resistances, where the Cromwell far outperforms the 3001D's on all surfaces, and their relative top speeds of 56 versus 64 means that it can't quite keep up with the Cromwell, but does a damn fine job of trying, far outperforming most other medium tanks of its tier, except in the terrain resistance departments. What you want to use the speed for depends entirely on your mood, something I think is a great strength of the tank. If you feel like sniping/reporting, you have the speed to get there quickly and stealthily. Or if you feel like going headfirst into the enemy lines, or even behind enemy lines, it allows you to take them by surprise and offset your low alpha damage with the surprise of you subtly popping up where they wouldn't have expected. It also allows you to respond very fast to developing situations across the battlefield, meaning you don't have to put all your shells into one light tank, so to speak. It is not at all unheard of to start the match off on one flank of the map, wipe out everything over there, support the middle flank with long range, and get back home to the base in time to protect it from being capped, all without even catching a sweat. What all of this combined gives us is a Cromwell with decently usable armor, a gun that is great when used properly, and a slightly slower top speed than its British cousin, giving you more time to think between engagements, but still allowing you to move rapidly across the battlefield, taking shots of opportunity rather than duking it out directly on the front lines, allowing you to choose. You to have the power to choose what you want to do. Alright, and with that, I hope you've enjoyed my tank review. If you did, please remember to vote, comment and subscribe so I know whether or not I should make more reviews like this. However, if I do have to, that also means I have to choose the next tank. Yes indeed. Hum-dee-dee-hum. What should I choose? Maybe this one. Maybe this one. Or maybe I should choose this. Yes, this could go. Or this. Ooh, we'll have to see about that. I hope to see you back tomorrow. Have a good night.